In tonight's Love Live at 6, Public Service Minister Henry Charles Usher rules out retrenchment as government secures an $8 million civil service modernization package. Back-to-school shoppers will pay no GST on laptops on 2 Saturdays in August. The government proposes a major overhaul of Belize's technical and vocational education sector. A new education bill seeks free, compulsory and inclusive basic education along with stricter teacher certification. Trade license applications and payments go digital through the new Tralma platform. Parliamentarians unite behind sweeping restrictions on smoking, vaping and tobacco sales and reduced electricity imports from Mexico force BL to implement another round of load shedding. Stay tuned for those stories and more in tonight's newscast. Good evening. This is Love Television. This is the evening news. I am Ernesto Vasquez. Despite concerns over the size of government's wage bill, Minister of the Public Service Henry Charles Usher says retrenchment is not on the table. Usher made the declaration during today's House of Representatives meeting where members debated an $8 million loan motion for the support to a civil service modernization project. The Inter-American Development Bank will provide the loan while the government of Belize will contribute an additional $1 million in counterpart funding. The project is intended to improve control over personnel costs and strengthen workforce planning across central government. During the debate, Usher acknowledged that the public sector wage bill remains high, but insisted that modernization will not involve sending public officers home. Minister Usher added the project will instead focus on building a more efficient and properly managed public service. It will support expenditure controls, workforce planning, digital transformation, data analysis, and improvements to human resource management. The Ministry of the Public Service and Disaster Risk Management will serve as the executing agency. The minister explained how the financing will be used and what the modernization effort is expected to deliver. The IDB loan will be dispersed over 5 years and carries a 25-year term, including a 66-month grace period before the first principal payment. It will be repaid through 39 semi-annual installments of approximately $205,000 each. Interest will be calculated using a SOFR-based rate. Leader of the opposition, Tracy Panton, however, raised concerns about the government taking on another loan. While not dismissing the need to modernize the public service, Panton called for greater transparency regarding the project, its expenditure and the results taxpayers should expect. The loan motion states that the project should help the government control personnel costs, improve workforce planning, ensuring that public funds are used more efficiently. The Caribbean Court of Justice has dismissed an application by the Toledo Alcalde Association and the Maya Leaders Alliance seeking further clarification of the court's 2015 consent order on Maya customary land rights. The application was filed earlier this year amid concerns about the implementation of the landmark order. However, the CCJ ruled today that it would not intervene in the process at this stage and instead urged the Maya representatives and the government of Belize to continue working together. In delivering the court's decision, Justice Winston Anderson reflected on the CCJ's decade-long involvement in monitoring the implementation of the consent order. He said the court had deliberately maintained a hands-on supervisory role to ensure that the promises contained in the 2015 judgment were translated into practical improvements for Maya communities. Justice Anderson said the CCJ had guided the parties in mapping and demarcating Maya customary lands, securing titles, strengthening institutions, ensuring that development decisions affecting Maya lands are made lawfully and with genuine consultation and participation. He said the court is now satisfied the central elements of the implementation process have taken root and that direct judicial supervision is no longer required. The court acknowledged that the precise scope of Maya customary land tenure remains uncertain and will not be fully settled until it is formally identified and codified under Belizean law. Justice Anderson said that process is underway and should be given the opportunity to reach its conclusion. The judges therefore declined to intervene in the manner requested by the applicants. They encouraged the Toledo Alcalde Association, the Maya Leaders Alliance and the government of Belize to continue working towards the long-awaited final framework. The court notes that if the parties are dissatisfied with the final legislation or the outcome of the process, other legal avenues will remain available to challenge it. Godfrey Smith and Leslie Mendez represented the Toledo Alcalde Association and the Maya Leaders Alliance, while Andrew Marshalek and Samantha Matut represented the government of Belize. Belizeans planning to purchase a laptop for school will be able to do so without paying general sales tax on the 2 upcoming back-to-school GST-free days. The Belize Tax Service Department says the concession will be available on Saturday, August 15 and Saturday, August 29. It is intended to help students, parents and educators reduce the cost of essential educational technology. The tax break, however, is limited to 1 laptop per customer on each designated day. Buyers must present a valid government-issued identification document, such as a Social Security card or passport. Businesses participating in the initiative are required to record the buyer's name and identification number along with the invoice number, purchase date, laptop brand and model, serial number and selling price. Each invoice must also clearly state GST-free back-to-school tax-free days 2026. Retailers must submit a summary of their laptop sales to the tax department by August 21 for purchases made on August 15. Records for the second GST-free day must be submitted by September 4. The tax department says it will conduct compliance reviews after the initiative. Businesses found knowingly participating in or facilitating abuse of the concession could face reassessed GST, interest penalties or other action permitted under the law. Belize's technical and vocational education and training sector is set for a major overhaul under proposed legislation introduced in the House of Representatives today. Minister of Education Francis Fonseca introduced the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Bill 2026, which seeks to replace the outdated framework governing the sector with a modern national system aligned with Belize's workforce and development needs. Fonseca told the House that the existing legislation no longer reflects the realities of the labour market or the growing demand for skilled workers. He says the new bill is intended to give the TVET sector the legal authority, structure and oversight needed to operate effectively. A central feature of the bill is the establishment of an autonomous national training authority. That body would be responsible for planning, directing, regulating and overseeing Belize's TVET system. The proposed legislation would also introduce the registration and accreditation of TVET providers and assessment centers, along with certification requirements for trainers, assessors and verifiers. It would further provide for the development of national qualifications, curricula and consistent standards across the sector. Fonseca says the legislation was developed following consultations with the stakeholders who helped identify weaknesses in the existing system and the reforms needed to strengthen skills training. The bill also proposes the creation of sector skills councils to ensure training programs are informed by the needs of employers and developments within local, regional and international labour markets. It would additionally establish a dedicated fund to support the sustainable financing of TVET programs. The overall objective is to expand equitable access to quality, demand-driven training while building a more competitive and properly certified workforce. And the government is proposing sweeping changes to Belize's education system through the introduction of the Education Bill 2026. The Minister of Education, Fonseca, introduced the bill in the House today. The proposed legislation would repeal and replace the existing Education and Training Act, which currently governs the administration of the country's schools. According to the bill, the reforms are intended to make basic education in government schools and selected government-aided schools free, accessible, compulsory, relevant, inclusive and rights-based. Fonseca explained that the new legislation is designed to modernize the education system, improve the delivery and governance of educational services. The bill also proposes major changes to the licensing and certification of teachers. Prospective teachers will be required to undergo a more rigorous evaluation process, including subject matter testing and certification. It would also establish a pathway for secondary school teachers who do not hold a bachelor's degree to earn certification to teach the subjects for which they are qualified. Another central component is the creation of a national student assessment system. The proposed system would measure students' performance and the quality of instruction while allowing the Ministry of Education to make decisions using reliable evidence. The bill calls for student assessment results to be administered transparently and accountably. It is also expected to establish clearer standards across the school system and strengthen oversight of both educational institutions and teaching professionals. The proposed law is now expected to proceed through the legislative process for further examination and debate. Belize's trade licensing process is going digital as the Ministry of Rural Transformation, Community Development and Local Government launches two new platforms aimed at modernizing local governance and rural development. The Trade License Management and Administration System known as TRALMA and the Community Profile Information System or CPIS were officially launched yesterday in Belmopan. TRALMA will digitize the entire trade licensing process across Belize's municipalities and rural authorities, replacing paper-based procedures with separate online portals for applicants and government personnel. Business owners will be able to apply for a trade license, monitor the status of an application, make payments and download a verifiable license containing a QR code, all without having to complete the process in person. Chief Executive Officer Valentino Charles said the platform will support a cashless system while giving applicants greater access to information about their trade licenses. The second platform, CPIS, will serve as a centralized and publicly accessible source of information on Belize's rural communities. That system will contain demographic, economic and infrastructural data collected by rural community development officers using COBO technology. Shal explains that the platform will form part of a national information network, providing authorities with a clearer picture of communities, allowing them to track the status of businesses across the country. All this will help policymakers and development planners identify community needs, measure economic activity, and direct resources and interventions to the areas where they are most needed. The Tobacco Control Bill 2025 received its second reading in the House today, attracting broad support from parliamentarians on both sides of the aisle. While members raised points about implementation and enforcement, their contributions reflected general agreement with the bill's central purpose: protecting children and the wider public from tobacco use, nicotine addiction, and exposure to second-hand smoke. The legislation would bring Belize's tobacco control framework in line with the World Health Organization's Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which Belize ratified in 2005. It would regulate traditional tobacco products as well as newer products, including electronic nicotine delivery systems. During the debate, parliamentarians generally agreed that stronger action is needed to restrict access by minors, protect non-smokers, and address the increasing use of electronic cigarettes and flavored products among young people. Among its most consequential provisions, the published bill would prohibit smoking in public places, workplaces, and public transportation. Owners and managers would be required to display no smoking signs and take reasonable steps to prevent smoking on their premises. The proposed law would also prohibit the sale of tobacco products to anyone under the age of 18. Sellers would be required to verify a purchaser's age using photographic identification. Electronic nicotine and non-nicotine delivery systems, including commonly used vaping products, would be prohibited from being manufactured, imported, distributed, or sold. Flavored tobacco products and additives, including menthol, would also be banned. Other major provisions include a comprehensive prohibition on tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, as well as restrictions on misleading descriptions such as light and mild tobacco packaging would be required to carry graphic and written health warnings covering at least 80% of each principal display area. The bill would also prohibit the sale of individual cigarettes and other loose tobacco products, requiring them to be sold in compliant, sealed packages. The National Tobacco Control Committee would be established to advise the Minister of Health, coordinate national policy, and oversee the implementation of Belize's tobacco control plan. Police officers, customs officers, public health inspectors, and Bureau of Standards inspectors would be among those empowered to inspect premises, seize non-compliant products, and enforce the legislation. The bill proposes substantial fines and, for some offences, possible imprisonment. The legislation was first introduced in October of 2025 and reviewed by the Health and Human Development Committee. Its second reading had been deferred earlier this year before returning to the House today. Belizeans experienced power interruptions yesterday as Belize Electricity Limited carried out load shedding after a reduction in electricity supply from Mexico affected the country's available power, and BL had issued a tentative load shedding schedule after Mexico's Federal Electricity Commission, known as the CFE, indicated that high demand on its own electricity system would reduce the amount of electricity available for export to Belize. In June, BL also implemented load shedding after a reduced supply from the CFE. Combined with limitations affecting local generation, placed pressure on the country's available power supply. Belize's electricity supply comes from a combination of local generation and imported energy. However, when demand increases or when imported supply is reduced, the pressure on the national electricity system can become greater. This is especially important during the hotter months, when electricity use usually increases as homes and businesses rely on more air conditioning, fans, refrigeration, and other cooling equipment. To prevent a larger system failure, BL uses load shedding as a temporary measure. This involves turning off electricity in selected areas for a limited time to reduce pressure on the grid and maintain stability. While yesterday's power interruption affected customers in several areas, BL says the measure was necessary due to the limited availability of electricity supply and continues to monitor the situation. The recent outages have renewed attention on Belize's long-standing reliance on imported electricity and the country's ability to meet growing energy demands. For many Belizeans, the concern is not only about when the next interruption may occur, but what steps are being taken to strengthen Belize's electricity supply and reduce dependence on outside sources. BL says it continues as it monitors. It will provide updates if additional measures become necessary. We have more news up ahead. Don't go away. Stay with us. We'll be back with that right after the break. This is the evening news on Love Television this Friday night, the 31st of July 2026. Belizeans who display exceptional bravery and heroism could soon receive formal national recognition under a new Honours and Awards Act. Prime Minister John Briceño presented the proposed legislation during today's meeting of the House of Representatives. The Prime Minister made specific reference to Howell Ganj, whose actions during the hijacking of a domestic flight last year were widely regarded as heroic. Briceño said the incident highlighted the need for Belize to have a proper mechanism to honor citizens who risk their lives to protect others. The PM also outlined the honours and awards that currently exist in Belize, explaining why the system needs to be updated and strengthened. If passed, the act would allow the country to formally preserve and celebrate the stories of Belizeans whose courage, sacrifice and service have made a meaningful difference. She has spent years caring for children, families and the wider Belizean community. Tonight, that same community is being called on to care for her. Milagro Garel, a name many families across Belize know through her work in child health care, is facing a serious health challenge. Our reporter Suseli Shaw has the story. An Orange Walk family is racing against time to raise the money needed for their 3-year-old daughter to undergo surgery in Chetumal, Mexico. Little Raquel Quinones is scheduled to have the procedure tomorrow at Clínica Carranza. Her parents, Sonia Abigail Pat and Roberto Carlos Quinones, say she recently lost her ability to hear and speak because of her illness. The surgery is expected to cost some 5,000 Belize dollars. With the procedure quickly approaching, families appealing for donations to help cover Raquel's medical expenses. Her father spoke about how the little girl has been coping as the family prepares for the surgery. The family is organizing a fundraiser and says every contribution, regardless of the amount, will help them get Raquel the treatment she urgently needs. Donations can be deposited into Atlantic Bank account number 21200266161 in the name of Roberto Carlos Quinones. Contributions can also be made through Belize Bank account number 285-564-070-76000, or better remember, in the name of Sonia Abigail Pat. Anyone wishing to assist or obtain more information, please contact the family at 620-6450. That's 620-6450. Two San Pedro men accused of carrying out a daylight robbery at Alfaro's Construction and Design Company have pleaded not guilty in the High Court. Christian Denver Ramos and Trevor Ralph Lopez appeared before Justice Nigel Pilgrim, where they were indicted on one count of robbery. The case was adjourned to October 2nd for a case management conference. The charge stems from a robbery on March 7 of last year at the company's San Pedro town office. The company accountant, Oliver Torres, was preparing payments for employees when two armed men entered, held him at gunpoint. It is alleged that the robbers took $165,000, two iPhones, a gold chain with a cross pendant, a bracelet, a wallet, and a watch. Initial police reports following the incident, however, placed the amount of cash stolen at $60,000. Police later detained Ramos and Lopez and reported recovering a portion of the money and the jewelry. Both men were arraigned in the San Pedro Magistrates Court on March 11 of 2025 and put in prison. Police had also identified a third person as a possible suspect, but no additional arrest has been made. Ramos is represented by attorney Arthur Saldivar, while Lopez is unrepresented. Both accused are now out on High Court bail, which remains in effect. Children and adults from the Caribbean Shores community are learning basic sign language as part of a community policing initiative aimed at promoting inclusion. The class was held at the Caribbean Shores office, organized by officers attached to Precinct 4. 10 children, 2 adults participated, including senior citizen Julia Yearwood. The participants learned how to communicate the alphabet, numbers, and colors using sign language. They also took part in games, practiced spelling their names, and learned to identify numbers up to 55. The session was facilitated by Police Constables Norberto and Fortnard, along with Hector Romero and Norvea Sabida of Special Education Services, as well as Paola Sabido and Sveltana Romero. The organizers say the training provided participants with basic communication skills that can help them interact with persons who are deaf or hard of hearing, including neighbors and their classmates. We have the final segment of the news coming up right after this break. Please don't go away. Thank you for your patience. Fisherfolk and fishing cooperatives in Dangriga are putting their hurricane plans to the test through a 3-phase preparedness simulation exercise. The activity is conducted by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations in partnership with the Ministry of Blue Economy and Marine Conservation. Also supported by the Southern Region of the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO. Under a simulated tropical cyclone scenario, participants are testing how quickly warnings can be shared, how fishers and vessels can be accounted for, and how boats and equipment can be secured ahead of a storm. That exercise also covers evacuation procedures, communication protocols, and measures to ensure the fisheries sector can continue operating following a hurricane. NEMO says simulations of this kind help determine what is working, expose gaps in emergency plans, and improve coordination before the country faces an actual threat. And 3 Taiwanese medical students are gaining hands-on experience in Belize's public health system through a clinical placement at the Western Regional Hospital. The students Bo Jiang Chu, Tian Ki Wang, and Yi Chan are from Taiwan's National Yang Ming Chiao Tung University, completing their placement under the guidance of Western Regional Hospital Administrator Antonio Koyok. During a meeting with Taiwan's ambassador, the students spoke about working alongside Belizean healthcare professionals, caring for patients, and learning how the country's healthcare system operates. The ambassador praised the students for their commitment to public service and their willingness to contribute to the health and well-being of Belizeans. The Taiwanese embassy says it will continue promoting medical cooperation between Belize and Taiwan as part of the long-standing partnership between the two countries. And with that, we end tonight's evening news. And as we say good night, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. And if you did all week, we really appreciate it here on the news on Love Live at 6. I'm Ernesto Vasquez, wishing you a great weekend. Stay with us for the weather. And I'd like to thank Giovanni Castro and Greg Carnero for being with us behind the scenes, controlling camera and the switcher and all else, and also the team in the newsroom. Once again, have a great weekend. Keep safe. Good night.